So the DNC is attempting to change the format rules of what would be the next debate. I believe it happens in Arizona. So the DNC is proposing getting rid of the candidates standing up and fielding questions from moderators, responding, going after each other, that back and forth. And so the format they want to go to is more of a town hall style format where the candidates will be seated down behind chairs, and they'll be answering questions from people in the audience, supposedly undecided voters. And so the Bernie Sanders campaign, rightly so in my opinion, is pushed back very aggressively against the changes that the DNC is trying to make, because their rationale is that, well, no, we want to keep the same debate format because we think Bernie Sanders would absolutely be able to crush Joe Biden in this one-on-one format. He would be able to call him out on all of his horrible policy and voting records throughout the decades. And I think the reason why Joe Biden's campaign would be more acceptable of a town hall style format is because, again, Bernie Sanders wouldn't have as much of an opportunity to really go after and just really decimate Joe Biden on the issues, both in the past as far as policy and voting record, and the things that he supports now. He doesn't support Medicare for all, or canceling student loan debt, or Green New Deal, or all of these things, not to mention that Joe Biden's cognitive decline would be, on display in a more very apparent fashion, because in the other debates, there was more candidates. They were going after each other, not after Joe Biden as much, more going after Bloomberg. He's obviously out. Klobuchar's out. Buttigieg is out. Warren's out. It's just Bernie and Joe Biden at this point, and Bernie Sanders and his camp want the ability to really, highlight Joe Biden on his horrible policy and voting record, things like NAFTA, which, led to 1 million jobs plus being outsourced. Same thing with permanent normal trade relations with China, the Iraq War, welfare reform, I believe he was in favor of, I would assume. He was also, a huge proponent of the disastrous crime bill, the horribly racist, draconian war on drugs, the Iraq War, the bankruptcy bill, talked about working with segregationists, cuts to Medicare, Social Security, all these government programs multiple times. So, that's the really substantive stuff that Bernie Sanders would want to go after Joe Biden about. And Joe Biden, due to them just being really horrible positions to have taken in the past, isn't going to have much of a excuse or reasons why he supported that. And, maybe in the past he would have been able to get away with explaining those things away somehow, or just doing some type of, monologue of a word salad, saying a lot of stuff, trying to deflect from it. But now, given the fact that his mental faculties have declined at such a rapid pace even since 2016, because I saw a video or interview he was giving at that time talking about Bernie and Hillary, and he still seemed like he had all of his wits about him at that point. It's definitely clear through this election cycle that there's definitely some very serious cognitive decline happening with Joe Biden, and I'm not trying to poke fun of that. That's a very serious and troubling thing, and he really shouldn't be on the campaign trail at this point in his life. He should be really enjoying time with his friends and family members, and taking really good care of his physical and mental health, because it's just clear that he's not really capable at this point of running a really vigorous and well put together presidential campaign. And you got to be able to go out there and campaign, again, very strongly. So, for example, Joe Biden, I believe, had one campaign appearance today where he spoke for a total of 7 minutes, and during that time he had, again, a huge verbal gaffe. He was talking about getting reelected and how he's not going to get reelected. You're not the president, Joe Biden. And then we had him saying that he was running for Senate. If you don't like this Biden, vote for the other Biden. Super Tuesday, he confused his wife with his sister. They were standing on either side of him on the podium. He confused them. And again, these things are going to keep popping up and keep getting worse. And that's why his campaign is trying to limit as much exposure of Joe Biden as they can with regards to the media, with regards to these debates, with regards to speaking at his own freaking campaign rallies, for God's sake. So again, just to put that in perspective, Joe Biden did one campaign event today. He spoke for a grand total of 7 minutes. Bernie Sanders had 3 campaign events in 2 states where he spoke for around an hour at each event. So this is the reason why the DNC is wanting to change the debate format. At this point, it's to hide Joe Biden's declining mental faculties, as well as trying to make it harder for Bernie Sanders to really make those substantive critiques on policy and voting record, because again, there's a lot to go after Joe Biden for on those issues. So the Biden team, again, wants this format. They're saying, it wasn't up to them. It was the DNC and CNN. But the Biden campaign was like, no, we're fine with whatever debate format. If it's sitting, standing, talking, running, whatever, we're good with that. But deep down, we obviously know that their campaign was probably behind this a little bit, or the DNC was just able to read the tea leaves. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't gonna go well if we let Bernie Sanders just totally go after Joe Biden on policy and on these really substantive issues for an hour and a half or 2 hours. Joe Biden's not going to be able to hold up to that very that level of criticism that Bernie Sanders is going to throw at him. Obviously, it's going to be completely substantive and based on the issues, because that's what Bernie Sanders is all about. And so they're making the realization at this point, we got to try to protect Joe Biden as much as possible. But again, this shows what a weak candidate Joe Biden is. He's not. You got to be able to go out there and campaign at these events and speak to the crowd, speak to your voters, speak to potential voters for more than 7 minutes. You got to be a man, a person of the people who's willing to really get out there and campaign vigorously. But it's clear that Joe Biden isn't able to do that at a high level, and that's no fault of his own at this point. He's just not capable of doing that on a mental and a cognitive level. And if Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee, Trump is absolutely going to run away with this election. He will hit him on the senility, on the dementia issue. He'll hit him on the Iraq War, on corruption, on NAFTA, on the bankruptcy bill. All of these different things, and Joe Biden's going to have no comeback for those, and it's going to be really bad. So again, the Democratic establishment is propping up Joe Biden because a lot of them, they're already wealthy and powerful, and so they're okay with 4 more years of Trump. They have money for healthcare and education and all of these things where a huge swath of the U.S. population is really struggling, and they want somebody who actually is going to speak to those material needs and how they're going to make people's lives better. That's not Joe Biden. His campaign is like, well, we can't really do this, but I'm better than Trump. Bernie Sanders is actually offering a set of really concrete policies and platform measures that will drastically improve the lives of the working people in the United States. And that's, again, one of the reasons that he beats Donald Trump, because he's running on this populist left message of how he's going to improve the people's lives in the United States, not talking to them about, well, it has to stay this way because it's been that way for so long, not addressing the people's needs or their, real misery with regards to things like healthcare, education, the climate, infrastructure, the wars, all of these things. Joe Biden just says, well, I could beat Trump. So again, Sanders' campaign was totally on point, fighting back against this. They want it and need it to be Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden up there on the debate stage, going after each other. And obviously it's going to be more Bernie going after Biden because Biden's lost a few steps, unfortunately, in the last couple of years. So we'll see what happens with regards to this, because again, the Biden campaign is okay, with having this town hall format type event. Bernie Sanders and his team want it to be a one-on-one debate, so the voters will actually be able to really clearly see these huge differences in a lot of ways between what Bernie is fighting and advocating for and more of the status quo and quote return to normalcy of what the Biden and his campaign is fighting for. So those are my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section down below. Peace. Much love.